Welcome back to another episode of Life in the Stands podcast with Jake and Zach. We have another awesome show planned for today. We're going to get into some of the NBA playoff predictions and focus a bit on the Sixers since we have a special guest with us today. We also are going to talk about the new CBA and requiring a minimum of 55 games to win some awards and some of the other things that came with it, as well as some NFL draft moves that are taking place and what we'd like to see during the draft. So, Bender, do you want to take the first stab at our first topic with our Sixers expectations for the playoffs?
Yeah, so before we start talking about the Sixers, we do have our good friend Kyle here. Say hi, Kyle, real quick.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, we got the Ben Simmons fan himself. So we brought
Uh,
him on here. He's a fellow Sixers fan. We know him from back home, went to the same hometown school and everything. He tends to have outrageous takes, so we brought him on here, see if he can stir the pot a little bit. So we'll start with Kyle. What are your expectations for the Sixers in the playoffs now that everything's locked in?
First of all, I would like to say my takes are not outrageous. I just like to be very practical with my takes. Okay, but I would say Sixers, as a person who watches a lot of Nets. Okay, the Sixers match up really well against the Nets. They have a very skinny center in Claxton, so that's not really going to work out guarding Joel. Um, I say Sixers beat Nets in five, and then I have them losing the Celtics in six because I just see no possible way that we get past the Celtics.
So, okay, how are you creating that thought considering it came down to a game-winning shot game three against the Celtics of the season, and then we just beat the Celtics. Obviously, they were without Jaylen Brown, but I think even if you insert him into that spot, I feel like we still win that game with a dominant performance from Embiid. So, what are your thoughts on why we can't pass the Celtics?
Well, honestly, I think Jaylen Brown is the best of the two. Like, I think Jaylen Brown is better than Jason Tatum. So them not
I
having
would
him,
agree. I
yeah,
would
I think
agree.
we all agree on that. I think we all
yeah,
agree on that.
for sure. But I think them not having him was huge. Like, and the way that we won, I think Joel had what 52. Like, that's not going to happen every single game. And also, I would like to say in that final like minute, I was actually yelling at my screen just because I had no clue what the Celtics were trying to do. They were sending like single coverage with Grant Williams at Joel, and they expected it to work. It was crazy. So there's no way that they actually try to do that in a real playoff scenario. It's not going to happen.
That was kind of confusing to me because they threw what's his name, Cornette on him. Like
Yeah.
you're not going to stop Embiid with that goofball guarding him. I don't even know where they pulled him out of a hat from, but that's just not going to work. But are you a believer in one of the guys like supporting cast members of the Sixers, like Harden, Maxey, Tobias? Like, do you think anyone's going to step up and help Embiid? Because I think they're going to this year, which is why I think we're going to get past both the Celtics and the Bucks.
I have a very interesting take on this, one that you're not going to like. All right.
Oh
So
God.
games without Joel, you see guys like that shine. You see like Tobias for a little streak there. He had like a streak of 5 games with 20 plus games because Joel wasn't playing. And I understand that's just like shots coming down, like trickling down. But the offense that we run, it does not allow for any kind of like off ball movement, off ball players to get the ball and actually create shots for themselves. So it's going to have to be Joel because that's all Doc does. It's just every single play revolves around Doc just to get Joel the ball. And it's not going to work in playoffs. It hasn't worked for what, 5 years now? Like, I understand wanting to get your best player the ball, but you have to like regulate that and share the ball and create opportunities for other players, which doesn't happen.
I hope that at some point in the playoffs they run like more significant minutes without Joel because we, like you said, when the even like the games he's off the floor, yes, but even the minutes he's off the floor, they can play a little bit of a different style. If you put like Maxi and Harden and Melton, and now even like with McDaniels there and Paul Reed's been playing really well. Like I think he's playoff
For
ready.
sure.
I think like you can run some really interesting lineups with Tobias even in there as a four Tobias and Paul Reed and throw that some of that in the mix. You can really get up and down with that lineup. And I hope that when matchups allow for that, Doc is quicker to go to things like that, even if it means Embiid plays less minutes, because it might just be a matchups thing. It's crazy to say take Embiid off the floor, but a lot of teams in the East are just lanky wings that requires those kind of matchups.
Yeah, and I like that point. I was just going to say, I think the most significant minutes are going to come from whenever Embiid is not on the court. I feel like the X factor for me is Tobias Harris. So if you get him running with the second group like he's been the last couple of years, separate from Harden, because I don't like when Harden and him are in the second group together. I would like to see Tobias, Maxey, Shake, Niang kind of in that group. I feel like Tobias takes over and goes on his little spurts of scoring. And that's what we need for like us to stay steady until Embiid gets back into the game. Because obviously Embiid's plus minus like with the team on the court versus off the court is significant. So I think we need big minutes from Tobias within the second group.
Yeah, it goes back to honestly like Doc Rivers being willing to change quicker in general. We've been naming a ton of guys. That's a big difference with this Sixers team compared to years last too. We haven't had 10 guys that we've named out and said would be comfortable in a playoff rotation that have like probably earned minutes, but we could probably name 10 guys on the Sixers roster right now that could actually like play in the playoffs and be a comfortable part of the rotation. They haven't had that the past couple of years with Embiid there either. So hopefully Doc Rivers utilizes all of those weapons that are there because they've like all those guys have shown different things that they can do.
I have a very interesting question based on that. Which roster do you think is better? The 2019, like lost to the Raptors roster, or this roster?
I mean, if you're looking at Ben Simmons, like in that state of Ben Simmons,
Ben was pretty
I don't
good.
know. I don't know. Like that's interesting. But also Embiid was not the same player. That's another thing though.
Definitely
Like Embiid, this like he has changed as a player since then too. Like there's been a couple times where I've texted Bender throughout this year watching the Sixers play, and I've just been like, I've never seen him play like this. Where like he is just like forcefully pushing his way through three people, knowing that they're all trying to stop him at the rim, and he's just bigger and strong. But I've never seen him like how forceful and like brutal he's been at some like sometimes like going towards the rim. It's been kind of crazy. But I don't know, like the nostalgia in me kind of wants to take that team, but I think we're more athletic and lengthier, and we probably shoot just as well now. So I'd probably take this year's team over that team.
See, I'm gonna go the whole opposite direction. I think it's the 2019 team because I think our supporting cast was more consistent. Like just being able to have JJ Redick and Jimmy Butler in that spot. Ben Simmons is a completely different player from James Harden. James Harden obviously takes shots, that you're supposed to, unlike Ben Simmons. So
no.
no. So when you have Ben Simmons, guys like Tobias and Jimmy can get shots. When Harden is taking shots, you see Tobias get maybe 6 to 8 shots a game, which you need him probably 10 plus to win a game most times. So I think the involvement was more there, and you have a consistent 3-point shooter, probably one of the top 10 3-point shooters ever in JJ Redick on that team. I just
Very
think,
underrated.
yeah, I just think Joel Embiid, yes, he's a different animal now, but I think he was still consistent enough with other supporting members that year. That shot doesn't go in, we're talking about it differently. Like we probably win the whole thing. So
I think
I would
so.
take that
Yeah.
I would take that 2019 team.
Kawhi also traveled, by the way, but we're not going to talk about that.
He did. Only if they had replays for that back then, we would have been okay. So you did make some comments about Joel Embiid and like the offense revolving around him. Do you think he's the MVP?
That is the big question. All right. If you asked me this 3 weeks ago, I would have been hard no, just because like of the stuff that Jokic was doing. He was going insane efficiency, which was honestly my biggest complaint about Joel. In years past, he was very inefficient, but this year he's really picked it up. So that's been a big improvement. But I actually have 2 questions for you guys revolving this. Okay. Do you guys know the Sixers record without Joel Embiid?
This
No, I
season
do
or
not.
like overall, like since he's been
This season.
he's missed how many games?
16.
I want to say we're over 500.
We
Yeah,
are
I bet-
way over 500.
I bet we're like 12-4.
Close,
Yeah.
11-5. And
Yeah.
then my second question is, do you know the last time or how many times that a player has played less than 70 games and won MVP?
Early 2000s probably.
It's only been one time, and it was Bill Walton in 1978. So for those 2
Yeah.
reasons, like those are the 2 main arguments against Joel. He hasn't played enough games, and the record without him is actually like very good. That's way above what our record with him is, if you look at it statistically.
Okay, but to go against you, so the only other person you would take over Embiid is the Joker, then more than likely.
Giannis is
Or
debatable. He's right
he's
around it.
thrown himself in there, but I don't think he's done enough throughout the whole season to get in there because he missed time as well. And they were winning without him as well. So if you want to throw the
True.
same kind of like back and forth with that, I don't think he fits into that spot. So I feel like you have to be talking about the Joker or him or
I
Embiid.
actually,
Sorry.
yeah, I actually do
So,
have the Bucks record here. It's 11-8, so pretty similar. But the Nuggets without Jokic are 5-8, so they're definitely worse.
but you also can't lose to the Spurs and have a crappy game against the Rockets and say you're the MVP.
Okay, well,
So
Joel has crappy games against teams all the time. Like the other night, he went, I think it was, he took 25 shots and made like 11. Like you can't do that if you want to be MVP anyway.
yeah, but then what's his field goal percentage? You said his
That's
efficiency's been up this year.
Oh yeah, I think it's
So
around 55%. He's been much better lately this year.
yeah,
I
so
think this is the part of the problem with the MVP race, though, is that it does get like so nitpicky because there's things you could point out about like each of those three guys to make them the MVP or claim that they're not the MVP. My take on it is that like they're like everybody tries to discount the fact that there's a historical point to MVP or like a storyline point to MVP, but there is like there's drama and storyline around it. So if you look at that aspect of it, you just have to give it to Joel this year because like if you look at Giannis winning a couple and then Jokic winning a couple, Embiid has been there the past couple of years, second to last 2 years, rather within the last like 5 years, the past like 5 years, he's been around that top five area. It's time for him to win an MVP. So it's like that's why I give him the vote this year because like he did have 2 years prior that he probably deserved it. Jokic got it. It's like his turn to have a year. And I know it sounds kind of stupid, but that's probably what's going to happen because that's the way like human sentiment goes, and then that's how voters react, and then that's how it shakes out. So that's the reason why,
let's
like
but
in
let's
my
go
book,
let's
that's why
go
it's going that way.
let's go eyeball test for a second though. Please tell me you guys have seen Joel Embiid's effort on defense as of late. Because that side of the floor alone, I think, sets him apart from the Joker. So whenever
But I
there's
would
like a oh,
go
you
ahead,
go.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I would argue that the discrepancy in offense is just like makes up for more than that. And I know everybody likes to rip on Jokic for his defense, but honestly, he is not that bad of a defender. Like if you actually watch him play, he is not that terrible. That it's like
he's
a
not
big thing.
he's not that terrible because he's 7 foot, and
Yeah,
Embiid is leading the league in scoring. So how are you
There's
going
a
to give that much more of a difference over a guy that's leading the league in scoring on the crazy efficiency you just mentioned he's
well,
improved upon?
he is crazy efficient this year, but like Jokic is even more. Jokic is otherworldly efficiency. He's shooting like 65%. That's a whole 10% better. And when you look at the offense just works in Denver compared to here in Philly. It does not work here. He
What's the
is
offensive rating in both places?
I don't know
Does
that off the top of my head.
I'm
But
going to look it up right now. I bet the
okay,
Sixers
you
have a
look at
higher offensive rating.
but I'm just talking about when it revolves through Jokic. Jokic, like you cannot have a guy who's averaging 20, I think it's what 25, 11, and like 10. Basically, that is psychotic, especially on 65% shooting. I don't think he's going to win MVP. I think Joel is actually going to win MVP, and I think he locked that up with the Celtics win. Do I think Embiid necessarily deserves it? That's a very interesting question, and I don't
but
know if
okay,
I'm
I'm gonna address two different things. So I think there's a difference between being average on defense and being impactful. Because you said he's not bad, but I wouldn't
no.
throw him above average. So if he's average, Embiid's impactful, you see the plus minus when Embiid's on the court. And other teams' efficiency ratings on the court. Um, I just think there's a big discrepancy, whether you think there is or not. Um,
But
I
if we're going to
think
look
the
at plus minus,
offenses, yeah,
then
I think the
we also
offenses
have
are
to
run
look at the
differently
record.
though.
I know, but
I
and then you
guess
also have to look at the record with and without them too, because that's even more important than plus minus in my
I don't know about all that.
opinion.
So the offense is run differently. So you can depend on Harden, Maxey, and Tobias to pick up for Embiid when he's not playing, whereas Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. haven't been consistent for a long time since maybe even the bubble before Jamal Murray tore his ACL. So when you run the offenses differently, now I'm going to pile on to what you said earlier about Doc running the offense through Embiid. I think the offense in Denver cannot adjust when the Joker's out because everything's like high post dish, high post handoff dish, low post they're sending cutters. When Embiid posts up, you don't see cutters. The last time you saw a cutter was when Matisse Thybulle was on the team and he'd have the baseline cut. That was the last time you saw a cut with Embiid posting up, which I think is a problem with our offense. We just stand still and watch Embiid do whatever the hell he wants to. And I think that's
Well,
on Doc to figure out. But I don't know. Like, you can't just throw James Harden and Embiid in a pick and roll, even though I bet their rating, like efficiency rating out of the pick and roll is probably top 3 in the league. I just don't like it. You got to get others involved. You have a playmaker now in James Harden. Since nobody wants to call him a scorer anymore, let's call him a playmaker. I think it's on him also to try and set other people up. Tobias is not known for catch and shoot. He's got to be off the dribble, which is why I want him with the second team. But I just
I mean,
think
he has been known for catch and shoot this year, though.
This year he's gotten better. But when you have 3-4 years of experience of that, you're going to get used to it eventually, I hope.
He's shooting really well from 3. Yeah, I mean, he's shooting really well from 3. But regardless, most of the things that we've talked about, honestly, revolve around Doc Rivers making some changes and playing rotations well and honestly just coaching good series. He's going to need to coach Brooklyn Nets series, a decent series, but then he's going to have to coach 3 really good series probably to win it all. An update on the offensive rating and defensive ratings as well. The Sixers offensive rating was 116.7. The Nuggets offensive rating was 118.1. So Nuggets offensive rating was just slightly higher. And then the defensive rating for the Sixers was 112.7, and the Nuggets defensive rating was 113.5. So it's literally just about the same in both directions. Slightly higher for the Nuggets on offense, slightly lower where it should be. So better for the Sixers on defense. So
it sounds about right. I feel like that checks out.
Yeah.
But I would like to go back, Zach. How far do you have the Sixers going? I mentioned I have them going pretty far this year. If the Bucks end up being completely healthy, obviously, Grayson Allen got banged up in our game against them. I believe Pat Connaughton missed some time with a sprained ankle at the end of this year. I don't know if that was just rest or what that was. But I think if the Bucks are healthy, I'm taking the Sixers over the Celtics in that second round. I think we get conference finals this year, but I think if the Bucks are healthy, my finals prediction originally was Bucks Clippers. If the Clippers are healthy, I have the Clippers going all the way. But I'd like to know where you have the Sixers going.
The Clippers?
Yeah. No, I love this too because Kyle's just freaking out with his reactions to what Bender was saying. But no, honestly, I think that this is a different Sixers team this year than what we've seen in past years, and I think this is a different Sixers team than what we've seen even from the beginning of the season. A couple of things that stood out to me were like obviously the effort on defense. I think they have definitely like cranked it up a notch in defense. They finished top 10 in defensive rating and offensive rating for like one of the first times Embiid has been there. They've kind of like meddled around it. They've been close, but I think there's some crazy stat about like the last like 20 or 30 NBA champions being in the top 10 in both of those categories. And that's a pretty like widely known one. And they did actually finish in those categories this year. That's very different. I watched them go in close to like a 15 or 20 game win streak, which is the longest win streak they've had in a while. Watch them come down from 20 and 30 point or 10 and 20 point games. Watch them come from down against the Milwaukee Bucks away at Milwaukee in a big game where James Harden kind of exploded and did score the ball when he needed to. And I saw a lot of good mojo throughout the year. And then I think we had a lot of good additions picked up throughout the year. Paul Reed has definitely solidified himself as a piece. I think that the addition of Jalen McDaniels is really big. He's a better version of Matisse Thybulle for this team specifically. A little better off the dribble, a little bit better of a shooter, still lanky and defensive. D'Anthony Melton has proved to be a really good pickup. So I think this team actually does have the makings of like a real championship contender. I wouldn't have said that the past like 2 years, but this year I do actually feel that way. And then, obviously you picked them in the first round against the Nets. We all agree on that. The Celtics, I think, do have some inner turmoil kind of going on. I don't think Jaylen Brown is happy. I've been asking for a couple of weeks now if Bender thinks that he's going to stay there. I don't think he is. I think Jaylen Brown is out. If you listen to some of the media reports, some of the way he's answering questions, he's kind of fed up with it. And he's like, I'm happy to be winning, and I don't want to take that for granted. But at the same time, like, I think he's kind of tired of Boston. He's tired of being second fiddle to Jason Tatum, which could make sense based on all of us thinking that he's better than Jason Tatum. So all that taken into account, I think the Sixers could actually beat the Celtics in that 7-game series. I think the second 2 games of the season were closer because of the additions of people like Jalen McDaniels to the team, where we didn't have him at the beginning of the season. And then when we lost those first 2 games to the Celtics. And then the Bucks, I think we've always matched up well against the Bucks. I think Embiid likes to play the Bucks. I worry a little bit about James Harden against them with Drew Holiday, but hopefully we can relieve a little bit of that pressure. Maxey will hopefully have some fresh legs still. If we stay healthy, I think we match up like decently there. And then whoever comes out of the West, that's always just a crapshoot. But I think there's a real chance that they can make it to the finals this year. I wouldn't have, like I said, I wouldn't have said that in years past, but no, that was very long-winded. But kind of putting all that together, I think there's actually a shot that this team could do it. I'm more hopeful than I've been in the past couple of years.
That's fair.
I
I like
agree.
how we all immediately wrote off the Heat, that they're not going to beat the Celtics. But
Nah,
honestly,
I mentioned this. I mentioned this in past episode. I said
Ah,
the
yeah.
Celtics, if the Celtics get the Heat, they should be scared. Like they're going to be shaking in their
we
shoes.
should be scared. Do you see what the Heat did to us?
I get that, but I think the Heat are a better matchup for us than the Celtics, even though it's pretty close because we suck against the Heat zone, and I've said that before.
Yep.
But I still think the Heat have struggled more from 3 this year than the last couple of years, and I think that's killing them right now. So if for some reason they get hot in a series, I might be a little scared, but I think we're okay. I think the Celtics are not okay.
I think the most concerning part about those is that if they get to us, they're going to have to be playing out of their minds because that means they'll have beat the Celtics in the first round. So they will be shooting the lights out from 3. They will be hot. That is a scary proposition for the Sixers. No one wants to play the Heat. No one wants to play Jimmy Butler in the playoffs. No one wants to do that.
I think the winner of that series, it's going to go to 6 or 7 games, where ours is probably going to go 4 or 5. So I think we'll have fresher legs on whatever team comes out of that, which is why I think we get past second round at least.
A sweep would be huge for the Sixers. I know a lot of people are saying that might be the easiest series other than the Bucks. Like the betting odds and everything are going crazy with the Sixers in that series, but hopefully that lives up to it. You don't want to give that team any hope. It reminds me of the Nets Sixers series. They went like 6 games a couple years back with Jared Dudley, and do not let it get to that point. Like ended in 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Don't
mess around.
It's going to be important for this year.
Yeah, the Nets are a team that tend to feed off of momentum and stuff too, and I like the new pieces that they just got from the Suns. Like Bridges is playing out of his mind. Cam Johnson's consistent. If they decide to play Cam Thomas, as they should, he's also a bucket. So you just never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, and they have no expectations.
Yeah, for sure. I'd like to know from Kyle's end, since we never got his predictions at the beginning of the year, who's your finals matchup?
Finals matchup. Well, I heard I was scrolling through TikTok one day, okay, and I saw this very interesting account on my feed, and there was this guy who looked exactly like Jacob Bender over here, and he said he feels better about the Lakers than he does the Suns, and I about threw my phone across the room. I couldn't believe it because I think the Suns are going all the way in the West. There is nothing that is going to stop them. Ever since they've gotten KD, they've been 8-0. KD's playing out of his mind, actually better than when he had the ACL torn. I have Bucks.
The Achilles.
Yeah, sorry,
Achilles. Yeah.
Personal.
Same long-term injury, regardless.
Yeah,
but yeah, I don't know about all that. I think if the Clippers are healthy, that series is Game 7, and then it's a flip of a coin.
What do you like so much about the Clippers? I'm very interested.
They have defense like 3-and-D wings between Kawhi and PG, and they have depth.
PG's injured. Is he going to be back for playoffs?
I know. That's why I said healthy.
Yeah, so I just heard that. I just heard that he's not going to be back for the first series, so it's going to have to be the second series if he's coming back.
Whole series.
Yeah.
See, I still think there's a chance though because they have so much depth. Like Norman Powell slept on. Batum slept on. Like all those guys are very, very, very slept on. So
Zubac is still there. Zubac is a bad matchup for Ayton.
Russ is shooting well right now. I don't know if anybody's paid attention to that. Russ is shooting well. So that I don't know. I feel like that team's built like the old OKC when PG and Russ were on the same team, except with more depth and more of a supporting cast. And that team was like very good. That was like PG's MVP run before he got hurt. So
And you have
I think
Kawhi
that
on the
team's
Clippers
built.
in addition to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually watch a
So
lot of Clippers games and I like them. Like they do have a ton of depth. They have even like Bones Highland, like you didn't mention, but he's a very good
mhm.
player. And Robert Covington, he
Mhm.
doesn't really get a lot of minutes there, but he is honestly like he would be a rotation player on any other team. But I just don't see them making like close to the finals or anything, especially with PG out.
But I think it goes a long way having depth against a team like the Suns because the Suns' depth has not been contributing in a lot of their wins with KD. I
Mhm.
think asking KD and D Book to carry is it's realistic because they're probably two of the best scorers in the league, but we got to see them healthy. Um, he can't be rolling his ankle on a ghost, and CP3
Fair.
can't be pulling hamstrings. So we just got to see what happens.
All right.
But
That's fair. I
that's what I'm
do
thinking.
also think the Suns have depth though with Terrence Ross. They got TJ Warren. They have like a decent amount of wing depth. The center depth, like Bismack Biyombo is playing out of his mind too, great, which is crazy. Campaign is a very underrated backup point guard in my opinion. So I don't know. I still think the Suns are going to be going to the finals. I think it's going to be Bucks Suns, if I had to guess.
On both sides of the bracket, it's probably going to be a war of attrition too. Which series go to 7 games, 6 games, 5 games? Who gets a rest where? I think it's going to play a lot into who's ready for who and how those series continue on. Because a lot of the first round matchups are really interesting, but this obviously happens every year. But the second and third round matchups get even more interesting. And whoever is able to kind of come out of that first round unscathed is going to have a big advantage when it comes time to actually get into the later rounds.
Yeah, for sure. I actually want to keep Kyle here for this because he mentioned the
Okay.
amount of games Embiid didn't play.
Mhm.
So, what are your thoughts on the new CBA requiring him a minimum of 65 games played in order to win of individual awards?
Um, I think you should honestly up that, in my opinion. I think it should go up to 70 because I mean, like I mentioned
That's
earlier, the
gross.
Bill Walton. I mean,
That's
like
gross.
you can't give a person an award for MVP when they're not even playing 25% of their games. Like that's crazy. You can't do that.
I think
In
it's a
days
good
past.
point too. I think it's a good point too. I've seen a lot of arguments about the like the total amount of points scored too versus the highest average. In the NFL, it's the most rushing yards. It's the most passing yards. It's not the most passing yards per game. It's not the most rushing yards per game. You can't play 8 games as an NFL quarterback and say you're the passing leader because you pass for 350 a game.
That's a
It's
very
going to
good
be
point.
given to it's going to be given to the guy that passed for 5,000. So why isn't the NBA set up like that? Why is it not total of points leader, total assist leader, total rebounds leader? Like that realistically should be who we're looking at here.
There's obviously some differences there, but I honestly agree with what Draymond Green said on his podcast about like contract issues. Like if you have some scrubs getting on NBA first team, second team, they're going to use that as leverage for getting their deals done. Like guys like I'm sorry, I don't like this player at all. I think he's overrated. John Collins got his bag. If you got a player like John Collins getting their bags, you're going to screw like that. The Atlanta Hawks are screwed now. Like they can't move him. They tried moving him the last 2 years. So like this whole thing of playing a minimum of 65 games is just going to be messed up with like negotiations. So I just don't like that, and I don't like seeing guys like that make an All NBA team. Like it's just not realistic. Like if Steph Curry misses 30 games because he breaks his hand or has an ankle sprain or whatever it is, like I don't know, man. I feel like that's crazy to keep somebody like Steph off that list because of a minimum.
If you do totals, I feel like that does kind of solve some of those issues because like if you're gonna still be like doing totals, like Steph Curry's output for what would it be 50 games is gonna be way higher than some scrubs output for 80 games still. So like it's not gonna be a perfect system, but I think it will at least force the players to push to play more games, which is what they're trying to do. Like they're trying to get the players to play
Yeah,
more games because that's what the fans want. So like that's
I
all they're
would
trying
agree
to
with
do.
the
And
point.
I mean,
I would agree with the point totals, but just having that label that you made an All NBA team just makes a difference when you're trying to,
yeah,
you know. So
yeah, yeah. There's
that's how I
money
feel about it.
involved, but there's a lot of things that are the reasons for bad contracts being handed out too. So at the end of the day, there's always going to be bad contracts handed out. You can go back for as long as you want and point to bad contracts and
Tobias
You're right.
Harris.
You're right. Crazy. At the time, it wasn't a bad deal because
It
we had to
wasn't.
keep
No,
somebody.
I
We
would
had to keep
stand
somebody.
by that. Tobias is a very underrated player, and he gets a lot of hate when he's in an offense that like won't allow him to actually shine.
better on
Yeah,
defense
for
this year
sure.
too. Will guard the
True.
number one wing a lot of times.
Very true.
For sure. For sure. Well, thank you, Kyle, for joining us today.
Of course,
Appreciate your time.
of course.
Don't appreciate your crazy takes, but it's besides the
Uh,
point.
Before I leave, then I would like to leave you with one more take. Joel Embiid cost us a championship in 2019. He scored 17 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, and then 4 turnovers on only 37% shooting. He 100% cost that series. He switched on to Kawhi Leonard when he should have just let Ben take the coverage. We would have won a
All
championship.
right, we can kick him out of the call now, right? Because that's
All right, I'll
getting
leave.
bad.
I'll leave.
On that note, Kyle is
get out of
leaving.
here. Get out of here. We
See
don't
you
want you
guys.
here anymore. Leave. All right, so we're gonna move on to our next topic here. We don't have a lot of time, but it's a very interesting one. Zach, is there any NFL draft move you would like to see before or even during the draft that you think would be something crazy, or you just like to see anything like that?
Yeah, of course I'm going to talk about the Steelers. Yeah, keep it on the same wavelength of talking about some of our favorite teams today. I would love to see them draft Joey Porter Jr. at 17th overall. Thought we had a top 30 visit with him. I think he would just fit perfectly with Patrick Peterson being a mentor for him there in Pittsburgh. I don't think he's going to fall to 17, but that would be an absolute dream. I think it would be incredible if he fell to 17. Other than that, I just want to see as much chaos in the top 10 as possible. I just think it's more fun that way. But that's about it. Anything else that you're hoping for, Bender?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think he's going to go nuts and be able to adjust just like Sauce Gardner has in his 1st year. I think that was a big difference for the Jets. So I think he can do the same thing. But what I would like to see, and I thought about this after we talked about different draft moves and kind of things like that in the past. I want the Ravens to trade Lamar Jackson for a top 5 pick to get Anthony Richardson. If you see the way they run their offense, I think you can have a Lamar 2.0 with him on their team. You don't have to change your scheme. You don't have to do any of that. You can just develop him in that system. You got OBJ now after he just signed yesterday. So you have some help. You got OBJ, Mark Andrews. You're going to get J.K. Dobbins the ball this year because he complained at the end of last year. So, he's touching the ball now.
Yep.
There's no reason to change. I think that team can be pretty steady if they end up making that move. And you're going to get other draft compensation or other players in that Lamar trade, not just a top pick.
Yeah. I mean, you do lose. I mean, you do put a rookie quarterback in play, which always takes a season or two. But honestly, Lamar was best as a rookie, and maybe Anthony Richardson kind of turns out the same way. Colin Kaepernick was best 2-3 years in, not his first year, but 2-3 years in, caught his stride, and then defenses adapted, and that was it. Not that Lamar is no longer good, but
sometimes it's not always about a rookie quarterback adjusting to the defense. Sometimes it's about the defense adjusting to a whole new player. So
Yep, that's absolutely true. Yeah, I mean, that would be a lot of fun. I'm definitely not discounting it because I think it would be a lot of fun. It would be interesting to just see if the trade would happen. I don't understand why organizations are not seeking Lamar. They're just calling him a really expensive option. But it feels like he should be getting more attention than he is, at least, which is a little unfortunate.
Yeah, for sure. Well, this wraps up our next episode of Life in the Stands podcast. We did have a special guest today, very NBA loaded, expected to be that way for the coming days because of the NBA play-in and playoffs. So just stay tuned and see what craziness happens in these NBA playoffs.